Imagine for a moment that you're in charge of the special effects for a film. You've got a possessed person who's going to spin around in their bed and hurl themselves around the room. How do you make that look realistic? Well, you start by making sure the camera moves with the actor. If you need them to fly across the room, you make sure that the camera stays low, and then you use forced perspective to show how high up they are. In other words, a simple trick of the eye. If you were watching The Exorcist, though, these tricks might not work on you because there was one scene in particular that many people thought couldn't be faked. It's the scene in which the possessed person spins around in bed and hits the ceiling on their head, so hard that blood comes out of the side of their mouth. To this day, many people think that this scene is real. And honestly, it's not surprising because there are so many other scenes throughout the film that blur the line between fiction and reality. So what really happens in The Exorcist? Well, let's find out. Let me tell you a story of possessions, of prayers, and of a little girl named Regan. Our story starts in Iraq in the year 1949. A Catholic priest and an archaeologist named Father Damien Karras was sent to investigate some dig sites. His mission was to check out a cave that supposedly had idols in it and determine if they should be removed or left alone. After traveling to the cave with a group of villagers, Father Karras discovered that the idols were placed in the walls. But he also found something else. He found an amulet that was inscribed with the words, "The Lord is my light." Father Karras took the relic with him and returned home. But he never learned that he would regret that decision. You see, the item he had found was not a holy relic at all. It was an artifact that had belonged to Pazuzu, the demon king of the wind. And once Father Karras brought it home, the artifact ended up corrupting him. It drove him mad, and he began to act violently and erratically. He killed 2 people before he was eventually taken to an institution where he died. Now let's fast forward to Washington, D.C. in 1973. Here we meet Chris McNeil, an actress who's shooting a movie and staying in a house in the suburb of Georgetown with her 12-year-old daughter, Regan. One day, Chris has to go out and take her daughter along with her. While at the movies, however, Regan is separated from her mother, and the pair get lost. Although Chris finds her eventually, she decides to move into the home of a friend so that she can keep her daughter under closer watch. Still, Chris doesn't know that this is only temporary, because she soon notices that her daughter is acting strange. For example, her daughter suddenly begins swearing and speaks in foreign languages. She also attacks the housekeeper and grows super strong in the process. At one point, she even gets off the floor after breaking her leg. Because of this, Chris takes her daughter to the hospital. They run test after test, but the doctors don't come up with anything, and they end up sending her home again. Later, things get even stranger. Regan is hanging from the closet rod like she's a trapeze artist. And when Chris confronts her about it, she says she doesn't know how she got there. Something is clearly wrong. But what exactly? Chris reaches out to the church and asks for someone to perform an exorcism. Soon enough, Father Damien Karras arrives at the house. He performs the ritual and learns that there is an entity inside of Regan. However, he's too afraid to finish the job. He retreats from the house and heads to a church to pray, but once there he learns that he's not alone. There's someone in the confessional who wants to talk to him. And when he looks inside, he sees the face of his dead mother. As she appears to him, she tells him that he needs to return home and finish the exorcism. But he refuses, and he says he cannot fight the demon on his own. His mother replies that he won't be alone because an ally will be sent to him. And with that, she disappears. He hears a knock at the door and opens it to see another priest standing there. His name is Father Joseph Vito Cornelius Merwin, and he's an experienced exorcist. Together, the 2 priests return to the house. Father Merwin begins the process, but soon he realizes that the entity inside of Regan is not an ordinary one. She taunts the priests and makes the house shake, and as time goes on, the situation only gets worse. As Father Merwin continues the ceremony, he feels weaker and weaker, and the demon is able to possess him temporarily. During its brief time in control, It attacks Father Karras and tells him that he will never defeat it. However, Father Karras is able to gain control again and continue the ritual. But when he does, the demon causes Father Merrin to have a heart attack and die. Now, Father Karras is all alone, and the demon taunts him, telling him that he'll never win. But Father Karras manages to keep going, and when he finally has the chance, he smashes the skull of the possessed girl, killing her. Just then, however, the demon jumps from Regan and enters Father Karras. Once inside him, the demon begins to writhe around and thrash about. The entity is so powerful that it breaks through the bones of Father Karras's legs, causing him to fall out of the window. As he falls, though, the demon cries out and screams in agony. It's been banished from both the house and the two humans it possessed. In the end, Regan wakes up and she has no idea what happened to her. Chris is overjoyed that her daughter is back, but she knows that she'll never forget what happened. On the outside, it looks like the exorcism was successful. But what did happen in the end? Was Father Karras really gone forever? Or is he doomed to wander the earth with the demon inside him? And what happens when a demon takes over a human body? These questions and more will be answered today on our channel. Father Karras's body is found at the bottom of the hill outside of the house, and a doctor later confirms that he died from trauma he received when he fell. Meanwhile, Chris doesn't realize that her daughter was possessed by a demon. She thinks that she's perfectly fine, and she brings her to school the next day. But as she walks through the door, she can hear her daughter talking to herself. She asks Regan if everything's okay, and her daughter responds by saying, "He who is not with us is against us." From that moment on, Chris is terrified that the demon is still inside of her daughter. It's clear that she's trying to do everything right and bring her daughter to church, but her mind is filled with doubt. Is the exorcism really over? Or has the demon simply waited until the coast is clear to strike again? Time will tell. But one thing is certain. This story is based on a true story. The author of the original novel said that he heard about an exorcism from a Jesuit priest. He decided to write a story about it, but he wrote his own story instead. Even the director of the film believes that the story is true, although he admits that he's not sure where the truth ends and fiction begins. One thing is for sure, though. The true story involved a boy rather than a girl, and he wasn't possessed by a demon king, but by a demon named Hephaestus. In fact, the exorcism of Roland Hunkeler might be one of the most documented cases of demonic possession in history. The case was investigated by theologians and psychiatrists, and the full story was written down by the priest who performed the ritual. Unlike the movie, though, the possession didn't result in a happy ending. In fact, the exorcism failed completely. Today, there are those who say that Roland is still possessed and wandering the streets of Germany. The reason for this is because during the exorcism, the priest accidentally called on another demon, causing Hunkeler to become possessed by both demons at once. They were both driven out eventually, but Roland remains possessed by an unknown number of demons to this day. What do you think happened in the end? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And while you're there, make sure to subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, check out some other videos on our channel. I think you'll love them. And if you haven't already, please do so.